Good evening and welcome to the Governance and Policy Committee meeting of December 16th, 2021. We will be keeping this meeting very short, only discussing 2 to 3 topics so that we can adjourn before the Education and Wellness Committee meeting, which is meeting at 7 o'clock tonight. So first, let's just say hello to everyone here. I'm Chris Vallon, I chair this committee. Tracy. Okay. Ashley.
Ashley Pineda, board trustee.
Can you hear me, Chris?
Now I can.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm the member of the committee, current board.
And you scattered out a little bit, so I'm just going to repeat your name, Tracy Mairs, board president and member of this committee. And Laser.
Laser Alert, network administrator.
Thank you. So I'm calling the meeting to order at approximately 6:11. First order of business is, let me go to here, I believe. Is approving the minutes from the November 17th meeting. I did send those, or the, oh, I got the date wrong on this. I'll have to fix that. The meeting was when? The 18th. Okay. November 18th meeting. I did send those earlier. Did anyone have a chance to review them or have any suggestions for amendments? Any comments?
No, not for me. No.
Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
So moved.
I will take that as a so moved. Any seconds? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries, minutes approved. Moving on to the next thing. Last meeting, we also spent some time looking at a meeting observation sheet as a means to improve or evaluate how effectively and efficiently our board meetings are prepared and run. This was the original version of the sheet. It listed, I'm going to just zoom through a little bit. It listed 20 points for evaluation, an area for general comments. We removed some that we thought were not relevant to our meetings, condensed others, and as of now, this is a revised version of that worksheet. I think we still need to toy around a little bit with the format, but if we generally like the contents, that's the key question now. I was really trying to get this onto one page. As you can see, it's currently a double-sided page with room for comments still. I'm not sure if you guys had a chance to review this. If you like, we can take 2 minutes just to read through them to see if it's too dense, or if anyone makes a motion, we can move forward with that as well.
I actually like the content. I would like to change the format a little bit, and maybe instead of having such wide columns, we can do we could kind of move all the narrative onto one page and kind of just have a check off. I think if it's a check off and not so much room for writing, people might be willing to check off, and then maybe a space at the bottom just for overall general comments, or if you wanted to comment on one particular area. I'm not sure that somebody would have a comment in each area, each question.
Okay, that's good feedback. Trustee Pineda, did you have any observations?
I'm going with Tracy's suggestion. I think that makes sense, and it'll make the form look a little less unwieldy.
Okay. Okay, so just to summarize,
Each
and to make
meeting.
sure I understand, I'm going to make the column, get rid of some of the space, basically, push everything up and leave the commenting to a bottom of the page area. Is that correct?
Yes, and like how it says score 1 through 5, instead of 1 to 5, it can be like agree. You know how there's those scales, agree, neutral or disagree, make 5 scale, strongly agree, neutral, disagree or strongly disagree or something like that, so that there's a scale. They can just check the box and then they can make a comment.
Agree, strongly agree, disagree. Okay. Okay. All right, so I will make those amendments ahead of our next meeting, I believe is January 13th, and present that final version to you guys for approval before we submit it to the whole board. Is that the next action point? Yes, that's the next action point. Okay. Sounds great. I'm sure anyone will interrupt me if that's not the case.
At the bottom.
Okay. We don't need this anymore. Okay, so we're going to jump back up to, we're doing a policy review since thanks to our community, both of our propositions at the vote this past Tuesday, December 14th, did pass. We were able to create a capital reserve fund, and specifically to this committee, the public has approved an ex officio student member of the Board of Education who will be able to attend public portions of our board meetings each month and provide that student input to the board. So tonight we are discussing how to choose that student member. However, because we are waiting for another person to join us, or at least one other person to join us, we're going to just skip down to a related policy, policy 3240, which is student participation in public information programs. This came up recently when we had a student come and present information as part of public comments at a board meeting. And there was some debate as to whether that student could attend without written parental permission as per the last point of this policy. So I thought we'd just take a few minutes to address this policy and see if we want to make any suggestions for change, and then we'll circle back up to a student member of the board. Just for transcription purposes, I'm going to read through this policy very quickly. This policy is called Student Participation in Public Information Programs. Policy number 3240 was adopted on July 3rd, 2012. The policy reads as follows. The participation of students in interpreting the educational programs of the schools to the community shall be encouraged. There's a spelling error there. However, A, students shall not be exploited for the benefit of any individual or group and shall participate only in appropriate situations. B, the use of students shall always be evaluated in terms of the effect on the child. C, students shall not solicit or promote school district issues without the approval of the superintendent of schools. And D, written parental approval will be mandatory for any student addressing the Greenburgh Central School District and Board of Education. Does anyone have any initial thoughts, comments, suggestions regarding this policy?
It's good. So all of our policies have to go through the process of legal. So I'm a little confused about how this process made it, although I understand different law firms give different advice. Our law firm did come back and say that all persons, including students, have the right to speak at a public meeting, that we actually can't say that they must have written permission. We can't restrict them from public comments when we hold public comments. So I would love to send this to legal and ask about that last bit. If they mandate that we take it off, I agree that we should take it off. And if they do not mandate that, I would ask that we have that for students of a certain age, 11 or whatever, or a particular grade maybe.
Which would require parental approval or presence.
Yes, of a particular age, yes.
So I'd like to make a suggestion. I think we're combining a lot of things together here. I almost would say that the student ex officio board member kind of doesn't fall under this policy per se. And I'm wondering if we should be looking at some of the other school districts that already have their policies, and see how they've adjusted them for that.
I do, our district clerk did send me some examples of other school district policies, which I'll share with you in just a moment. But I thought because this policy had come up earlier this year, I just thought, again, while we're waiting for someone to join us, that we would take a minute to address this particular one.
Can you reshare that? Because I actually had, when it came up earlier this year, I had Ivy poll the districts, and she got feedback on how those districts handled public comments when it came to written statements, because remember, I had a request for written statement to be read. Written statements as well as student participation. So she did a whole grid and spreadsheet, and actually they don't really address it. No one's as specific as we are with regard to the written permission.
I do remember seeing that grid, and the very few districts that referenced it said, I don't want to pull it up online.
Do you have it? Can you send it to Ashley as well?
Yes. I just want to make a quick notation that this policy is regarding public information programs. So I don't think it's limited to just Board of Education meetings. It might be a student going to a library to present information or perform. It might be the wording of this is very vague, and I have a feeling it's interpreting the educational programs of the schools to the community. Who knows if it includes
so that's different.
Band performing in a parade? I don't know. So I think this policy has a little bit of a wider scope than just board meetings. But I think
do we need to have two separate? So then, do we need to have two separate to delineate? Do we need to then, instead of student participation, which policy is this? This is
not
student participation in public. So then do we need to specify in the public participation at board meeting policy? I don't know if that's what it's officially called. Student or minors, participation of minors, and actually have it spelled out in that policy as opposed to this one.
I understand.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm writing down. You want to know if the policy should specify actions related to minor or rules related to minors, which it does not currently, to my knowledge. I have to pull that up. Okay.
So good evening. Sorry I'm so late.
Hi, Dr. Iverson.
Hi, how are you? I was in the union meeting, so sorry.
It's okay. We're covering a couple other things.
Okay.
Until you were available. So we're just buttoning up. Looks like we need to do a little bit more research on this particular policy and what sort of events it relates to. And find out if public comments and minors, how they're treated in our existing policy and elsewhere, to circle back to that. And definitely have our lawyers look at Part D here. Okay. So we will cycle back to our newly approved ex officio student member of the board. And just to remind everyone this was enacted per education law. And now we need to discuss how we choose that student member. I've quoted here the applicable law, and I'll just read it again for transcription purposes. Notwithstanding any other law to the contrary, the ex officio student member of the board may be any of the following: the student that has been duly elected as student president of the high school, a student duly elected by the student body, a student selected by the high school student government, a student selected by the high school principal, a student selected by the superintendent of schools, a student selected by majority vote of the school board. Provided, however, in districts having district-wide student governments or advisory committees, the student ex officio member shall be selected by the superintendent of schools from among the members of such district-wide student governments or advisory committees, subject to ratification by a majority vote of the school board. I believe that last sentence does not apply in
No.
our district currently.
No,
Okay, and then the last part says the ex officio student member shall be a senior at the high school and shall have attended such high school for at least 2 years prior to selection. So in researching whether we need a new policy or whether we would amend one of our existing policies, our district clerk, Ms. Kraus, did provide information this morning. And there were 2 examples which pretty much just quote the law. The third example, which I'm bringing up here, quoted some of the law, which I just read. Provided that this is how we voted, this is how they were chosen, they're entitled to sit with board members, they're not entitled to vote
No.
or executive sessions. But this particular district did specifically address in their policy the student selection process. So this particular district says the student selection process will be XYZ, and that's what we're here to discuss tonight. So Mr. Pineda, does that answer your initial question about which policy would be applicable to our ex officio member?
It does, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we'll be adding in a new policy. Now I'm opening the floor to discussion on how we will choose, or how we will recommend to the board, how we will choose the student member. Would anyone like to start? So I'll go back to the actual law here. Does anyone have any initial thoughts?
From my experience, the person who I've seen it both ways, where it's at the school level and it's a voting process that students vote on. They put something in place at the school, but the criteria for that person is really defined, because it should be, a student of very good standing, because, there are meetings they will have to be attending. A student who's shown some civic minded, community minded, who has a little bit of a resume, although maybe a member of the government. I like that. I like the students, is my point, being involved and selecting that candidate, and then the candidate, and they can come up with 2. I mean, we can make it any way we want, and they come before the board. And the board has the final selection based on that process. So the students get involved. You get several who may want to sign up and run for this, and it's just like a voting kind of a process, and they come before the board. Or that's how I've seen it. In one district, another district, they just the board created their own criteria, and had students have to apply. Somehow you got to get the kids who are involved, who want to do it, and they screened and selected the applicant. So I like the piece here. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, did you finish?
Yes, I'm finished.
You're lagging a little bit. Mr. Pineda.
Okay. Okay, what I was gonna say is that I truly think that the first approach Dr. Iverson mentioned makes the most sense in my mind. Yeah, that's my position. Thank you.
You know, because we're giving students voice as part of the, to be esteemed part of the board, to sit with the board members. So so this is a really, it goes in the resume, it's something that will open doors for them in their career. So I do think since it's student voice, students should have a voice and helping to identify the kid, the student, and then the board makes the final decision. So I would like to see the school put some process in place involving the student government. They all have grade level advisors, not that's the advice, but they all have grade level students who are over the grade level. I forget what maybe the presidents. And have the student body get involved and who's going to represent them at this esteemed level of governance. Based on their background, you know what I mean? Their grades, their behavior, how they've been as a model in the school, working and leading other children and students in the school. This is a real put together classy position. And so you want someone who exemplifies that.
I couldn't agree more with students being closer to that selection process or as close as possible with given certain criteria. Now, Ms. Mairs has dropped off. She is having trouble logging back in. Ms. Sterlert, I don't know if she's contacted you to get some help.
Let me see if I get it.
Okay, thank you. And just out of curiosity, I haven't had any conversations with the high school principal or any of the student government liaisons or advisors. I was wondering, mostly because we just had the vote and I didn't think it was really appropriate to discuss it until the vote happened and was passed. Have you had a chance, Dr. Iverson, to speak to anyone at the high school about this or?
Yes, I did, Trustee Bell. And just today, though, I received a text from Trustee Mairs about this, and I quickly was in a meeting with Matt Smith and said, listen, this is going to be discussed tonight. You have any initial thoughts around how we should go about this? Would you see the school being involved, you and a process? And he said to me, yeah, we would love to be involved in that and put something together at the school level to involve the kids. So he is in agreement with some of that. And we didn't talk specifically, Trustee Valen, about how that will look, but he is very interested in having this flesh out at the school level and come up with a recommendation for the board that you to review.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Pineda, what were your thoughts on having one or two alternate students be selected in case in case the primary couldn't attend a meeting? I'm not sure. Dr. Iverson, you had mentioned something about having multiple students, but I'm not clear on, would that be multiple students and they'd alternate if one couldn't attend, or multiple students put before the board or the principal or yourself for selection?
So one student, but if we have a process in place where several want to run for this or are interested, it may be two that come before the board ultimately to make the decision. But only one for the board.
Mr. Pineda, any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I'm totally in support of that. I do like the idea Dr. Iverson mentioned of having the students basically obviously run for this position and there being at least two so that there can be a choice. The other thing is, I think throughout that process, for these students, to Dr. Iverson's point, that are already in student government, they already have commitments and they already have things that they're balancing, they're juggling along with this school and their academic requirements. It might be helpful to actually have that second backup, I guess, per se, not necessarily to stand there in lieu of the other individual, but in the event that, should a few months go by and the primary student member realize, hey, you know what, this is too much, given their course load or any circumstances that could come up,
it would be helpful to already have that alternate in place so that we could just transition, because as we know, I believe the way we had discussed this during our last meeting, this would really be, they would be attending one of the board meetings each month, not both. So that's already that's a handful of meetings. That's not a ton. So if something were to go wrong there with an individual, it'd be helpful to have someone else to stand in and keep it going so that we don't lose that feedback loop, which is what we're looking for, right? We're looking to have that continuous feedback loop. And frankly, they're a valuable stakeholder. They are the most important stakeholder. So it's nice to hear that directly from them. So it'd be great to, I think, follow that approach.
Mhm. I'm not sure this is Ms. Mairs that has joined us. Tracy, is that?
I'm here.
Okay, we were just discussing, I'm not sure when you logged in or if you heard things as you were trying to get back on the meeting.
I didn't. I actually just heard the end of Dr. Iverson talking, and I heard your clarifying question and Ashley. And I would agree that we need more than, you know, a actual officio member and an alternate if that person couldn't make it. I also like the idea of the students, you know, putting their name in the hat and then running, have a, I don't know if you suggested that the student body vote on who they would want, or if the board decided, but I'm more inclined to have the student body decide, but I think that of course, the principal needs to have input in this because they're the closest to the students, the staff, and the actual building, and they would know if, you know, the students' caseload, you know, there's academic load. Maybe if they're having a hard time in school, maybe they could help to advise the student not to take on another responsibility, or maybe they could encourage students to take on the responsibility if they may need that sort of thing. So I really do want to hear from the building leadership on it. And then hopefully we can have the students involved as much as possible in selecting that person.
So would you like for me to follow up with the building leadership and have something from them to present to the board by Tuesday, or by the, not to the board, the committee? That's what I mean. The committee meeting next time it's scheduled, or beforehand, get something to you to look at and then discuss at the next meeting. And go ahead.
Sorry.
Tracy?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
If the building leader could come to I mean, I don't know how much time, it'd be like a 5-10 minute conversation, but if he wanted to, the building leadership or maybe designee, whoever, can come to and just talk to us about their point of view, you know.
Okay.
I'm saying maybe the students select, but maybe they would think maybe they'd want some other process. I don't know, but yeah, that's
Okay.
my input.
If our next meeting is January 13th, I believe, that would give both the building leader and if they were to loop in student government, time to meet and discuss what they would like to suggest to the board or to the committee. Is that appropriate? Okay, and I guess the next question I have is, who are we suggesting would create the criteria? Would we leave that? Would we see what perhaps the student government leaders, or would the building, what specifically is our ask for them, I guess, for the next meeting?
So my thinking on that is, I don't see anything wrong with the board kind of giving some kind of a description of what we're looking for in this individual, and then that goes to this committee to then add to and to build and to kind of fill in where they may have another perspective. But I think that as a board, it's okay to know what some characteristics that we would like to see, or you would like to see in this position, and or just leave it up to, they will come up with the criteria. Then it's either they will come up with that criteria, or
So if we outline the broad strokes now for 2 minutes, I mean, I've already noted down A student in good standing, from what you were saying earlier, Dr. Iverson, a student in
Yep.
good standing, someone who's possibly civic minded or community minded.
Yeah.
We probably need to define our expectations, which was, as you noted, Mr. Pineda, that they would attend at least one board meeting per month. I actually don't remember if we said the work session. That's the one I think we said, because that's where most of the presentations were. Yes, okay.
Yes.
So just so we can give them some of our expectations for them to work around. Is there anything else we want to
Do we
add to
want,
this list?
well, it's a question, I don't know how others feel, but do we want to loop in, whether guidance or advisors with regard to maybe students who've expressed wanting to go into the field of politics or government? Maybe they have run for the student government and didn't get elected, but they're interested in politics. Do we want to let the administration know that maybe they can encourage those students to run?
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think we add Trustee Valen, someone who's demonstrated excellent leadership in the building overall, just has, because they rise to the occasion. Students, you can just know those in the building. You can identify those who rise to the occasion of just showing leadership daily, just in who they are, and students gravitate to. So I think someone who's sort of exemplifies some level of being able to lead, and because that's the influence this person will have over the others in terms of his voice he brings to the board, because this person will be representing all of them. So there has to be someone they respect even at the building level. So I think leadership is important, just as exemplified in this as a student in any capacity. Strong leadership, capability is another criteria that we're looking for in this person.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So can I make a suggestion? Trustee Valen, with the criteria you put together, I would like the board to approve it. Could we add this to the agenda or new business of our next meeting? Because I want to keep this moving along so we don't lose too much time, at least for the board to approve the criteria.
I could write it up,
It could be
show
part of
you
the
guys,
committee
and present it
report.
as a committee report for comment at the next board meeting.
It could be a
Okay.
recommendation of the committee.
Okay. So I will summarize what everyone said right now before we hopefully adjourn within 2 minutes, because there's another meeting soon. So we would recommend, well, we're not really recommending, we're presenting, recommend as criteria for selection or election of student XYZ, student member, the following. The student is in good standing. We're talking academically or just say good standing. That covers a couple things, so.
Yeah, good standing, it means, well, my thinking is holistically, this is a student
Okay.
who academically is managing, is in school, behaviorally as well, in good standing in all those big areas.
Okay, we'll leave it vague. So a student in good standing, a student who has shown he, she, they is civic minded, community minded. Obviously a senior who's been in the district for at least 2 years, who will commit to attending one board meeting per month, ideally the work session.
Can I get clarity? Are we, and I'm sorry, I really have terrible technical difficulties this meeting, but can I get clarity on if this student is being elected by their peers, or if we're asking for students to apply and then they're meeting the board or the administration to select?
So I can give my input. I thought what Dr. Iverson said was, we're asking students to apply and then the student body to basically approve of those candidates, right? And then once that round has gone through, the final two, or I guess the highest tally, or that'll get diced up by the building leadership and figure that whole thing out with the input from the principal and all that, will be presented to the board for approval, and then we'll pick.
Thank
That's
you.
the way, that's my
Oh.
understanding.
I'm sorry, we're gonna pick out of the final two?
Correct. We would pick one as, I guess, the primary, and then the second one would be the alternate, in my mind.
I see, thank you.
And maybe by the time we hear back from our building leadership, they might have a different suggestion on that final stage. But I do, Dr. Iverson, that was my understanding as well.
Yes,
That's a good summary of what you said. Okay.
yes, that's, yeah. And it's just like you meeting the final two in exec session, having an opportunity to meet them and make that call at that point.
Okay. Just to continue on with the other criteria that we'll be recommending to the board for the official thing, that they've demonstrated excellent leadership in the building and are respected by fellow students. And I wrote down good influence and represent the group. So I'm going to say something like exhibit good character.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, I like good character.
That's a good one.
Okay, anything else? It's 6:47. I'm very mindful of the time. If we
Sounds
agree,
good.
okay, and if anyone thinks of anything to add, it's a small committee, we can do this. You can verify I'll write it up. You can verify that I've included everything, and we'll present this to the board on Tuesday, the 21st. Do I hear a motion to recommend this, to accept this?
So moved. I motion that this becomes a formal recommendation to the Board of Education.
Okay, second,
I
Tracy?
second that, thank you.
You all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, approved. Moving forward. One last little thing that I just wanted to put to the committee. I'd asked Board President Mairs if we should consider creating a generic email address for FOIL requests or things like that, whether it's district clerk at Greenburgh CSD or FOIL request at Greenburgh CSD, just so that history of those kind of official generic requests stay in the system from year to year to year to year. And I didn't know what the thought was, if that's even under the purview of this committee, but I think it's an issue we should consider. And we can table it. We can discuss it for 1 minute. We can.
I support that idea. I think it's a great one. And I don't see why we couldn't make that recommendation to the board.
Tracy, did you have any
agree.
thoughts?
I agree.
Okay, then I will, okay, so it sounds like it's an official recommendation. You both have just agreed. We'll pretend
Yes.
that was a motion that we've all approved. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Aye.
And Trustee Valen, I think the FOIL request name makes the most sense.
Okay, FOIL request at Greenburgh CSD. Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you guys for being so patient. And I'll probably see you on YouTube in about 10 minutes. Okay.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Okay, thank you. Good night. Thank you, Laser.
Nice. See you in a minute.
Bye.
No problem.